Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, 27-year veteran of the NYPD. You know, folks, the case of the Idaho 4, of course, we refer to them as that, but we'd rather refer to them by their names: Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Madison Mogen. When you think about it, this occurred November 13th, 2022. So this November is 2 years. It's 2 years. And can you imagine, with all of the things that have happened during this case, the ups and the downs, and just the families who lost loved ones in this case? And always I remember Christy and Steve Goncalves, of course, the parents of Kaylee Goncalves. They've been the most vocal, and the pain is written all over their faces. And I can't even imagine, as a parent, living through all of this. And of course, we have the Chapin family, a beautiful family. And you see Ethan Chapin, the tallest one of the three children. He was a triplet. And think of his mom and dad without him now. And triplets, think of triplets. They're attached symbiotically because they were in the womb for 9 months together, the same as set of twins. So just think of the torture that family's going through. And then, of course, Madison Mogen and Xana Kernodle. Just absolutely outrageous. And of course, I didn't mention, because I mentioned her parents, Kaylee Goncalves. The pain that these people have gone through in the past, now it's about a year and 9 months, a year and 8 months. And it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop, because the defendant, Bryan Kohberger, is eligible in this case for the death penalty. There are many people who have followed this case that think he's innocent. That's why this is a beautiful country. It's free. You can think whatever you want. The only people that are important in regards to this case is the 12 people ultimately who are picked to sit on that jury. You know, when we look at the House, it looks spooky right now. And my whole dissertation on tonight's show, the Idaho victims, have we forgotten them? Well, have we? Have we forgotten them? Are we giving too much attention to the defendant in this case? Are we too concerned with this person you see on the screen, Bryan Kohberger, who many people, again, may think that he's innocent? Is that the House? Remember the House? Should they rip it down? Should they not rip it down? That was the crime scene, you know? Have we forgotten the victims, the 4 victims in this case? 4 beautiful kids, you know? And I say kids because the oldest one was 21 years old. And think of the torture that their families have been through over this year and 9 months, going on almost 2 years. And I think of that, and I think all of you people out there that are listening to this, that are parents, should think about that. And in our system, of course, the defendant, who happens to be Bryan Kohberger, is innocent till proven guilty. So we must all realize that. But at the same time, we must remember these 4 people: Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, and their families, and the Idaho community. Because the Idaho community, Moscow, Idaho, has suffered greatly through this incident, the slaying of 4 college students from the University of Idaho. So folks, hang on to your hats, hang on to your opinions, hang on to your prayers, hang on to your loved ones. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone. You're about to enter the police off-the-cuff zone.
to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped in Tampa Ranch, Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
You know, in court documents, the police said that a combination of evidence had led them to arrest a suspect in this case, Bryan Kohberger, a PhD student at Washington State University, whose campus is in Pullman, Washington, a few miles west of Moscow. Mr. Kohberger was taken into custody at his parents' home in Pennsylvania after the case had remained unsolved for more than 6 weeks. Chief among that evidence is a leather knife sheath that was left on a bed in one of the 2 bedrooms where the murders took place. A Moscow police corporal said in an affidavit that DNA was found on the sheath. Prosecutors later said that Mr. Kohberger's DNA, which was tested after his arrest, proved to be a statistical match. Investigators said they used cell phone tower data to track Mr. Kohberger's phone on the night of the killings and obtained surveillance video that showed a white vehicle like Mr. Kohberger's repeatedly circling around the victim's house that night. For many, that's pretty damn strong evidence. For others, it's not that strong. Anyway, to join me tonight to dissect this case and really to remember the Idaho victims and say that police off the cuff, Real Crime Stories, has not forgotten them. But joining me tonight is retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, all-around good guy attorney. Welcome, Professor Michael Geary.
Hey,
Mike.
William. Good to see you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming.
You know, Mike, one of the things that I think that I just try to get the emotion out to our audience of how horrific this case is, because it becomes, you know, almost like cartoon characters with Kohberger, you know, like, oh, did he do it or did he not do it? Is he an incel? Is he a heroin addict? Was he a PhD student? How come he had no blood on him? How come there was no blood in the car? I don't think he did it. I think he did do it. How did the DNA get on the knife sheath? All of these things, Mike. And then we go back to the families and what they must be thinking as all of these things are discussed, because each one of them has a dead child.
Yeah, Bill, just think about it. You've got 2 sons. I've got 3 daughters. Phil's got a bunch of children, too. And to be a parent, you know, you could never imagine anything like this happening to you and your family. And it's unnatural and it's awful. And there's no getting over it. There's no closure. Really, it's something that you'll have to live with for the rest of your life, knowing that one of your children was murdered by a maniac. And that's something that you can't recover from. And so part of what we do in criminal justice is we're always trying to make sure that the defendant, the accused, who is considered innocent until proven guilty, the statutory presumption of that they get a fair trial. And so everything in the trial, from the start of arrest all the way through to the end, is geared to making sure that they get a fair trial. It's really not, the perspective isn't really focused on the witnesses. There's no focus on the victims. There's on the community. It's all about the defendant. And in some ways, that does a disservice to people like the Goncalveses and the Mogens, you know, and everything like that, because they're left out. They're not part of it. The only thing they can possibly do later on is, if there is a guilty verdict, they could get a chance to read a victim's impact statement. But unfortunately for the victims, they have to suffer through this day in and day out without any sort of feeling of closure or justice or anything like that. And it's just, sadly, the criminal justice system doesn't really have a part for the parents to play in this case. And that's sad, but that's unfortunately the reality of our criminal justice system.
Absolutely. I want to play a little bit of Brian Enton, who does a good job talking about when is this trial going to be?
That one is easy. The answer is June 2nd, 2025. For a long time, we didn't know the answer. There was no trial date. Now there is a trial date. It's about a year from now. We're told the trial is going to take 3 months, so it's going to be a long trial. The judge says 3 months. That will include jury selection, the trial itself, and then also the sentencing phase. Question 2 I get a lot: could there be a plea deal? So that's an interesting question. Right now, there's no indication that there's a plea deal on the table, although I will say with other cases that I've covered, a plea deal, discussions about a plea deal normally won't come till closer to the trial, which in this case is about a year out. But no indication of a plea deal right now. Normally, when there's discussions about a plea deal, victims' family members will be brought in to be a part of the discussions. And in this case, a plea deal would most likely or obviously involve death being taken off the table. Victim Kaylee Goncalves, I spoke to her family. They are against a plea deal. They want the death penalty. This is what they've told me in the past.
If he pled guilty and said, I'll plead guilty in exchange for a life sentence, have you thought about that?
Yeah, I don't want that because I do know, I studied the criminal system and the difference between life in prison. Even if it's 20, 30 years, he's 23 hours locked up. He doesn't get to do what is it, BTK
killer?
PTK.
Or whatever.
We've found out that he writes papers for other prisoners and gets treated really well because he's intelligent and he's able to help other prisoners get preferential treatment through the legal system. We don't want that type of behavior to happen in our case where he has influence outside of this event. So
that's been a hard one, though. I mean,
he could write a book. He can do things. Idaho doesn't have a law particular that protects against that.
The hard thing with that question, honestly, is that's where you forget, and I don't know how it's possible, but you forget that there's 3 other families involved here. We're not the only ones. It's not just, I'm like, this is not a one,
one crime fits all.
This is
right.
This isn't just our daughter.
Right. Some
and
might
I know
not
that
want to go through the trial.
I know some of the other families definitely would be, yes, like, let's go. Where do I sign? And I understand that 100%. 100%. I understand that. But you know what? Ultimately, it's not our call. I mean, they might ask us our opinion like they did on the death penalty. And we'll give it, but just because, our opinion is yay or nay doesn't mean that, that's what we get.
Another interesting point to make when you talk about a possible plea deal is the fact that Bryan Kohberger's attorney, Ann Taylor, has been very, very passionate that Kohberger is innocent. She's been...
I don't buy that for a second. I do not believe that Ann Taylor believes that Bryan Kohberger is innocent. First of all, Mike, and I said this to you off the air, and I'm going to say this to our audience, have they ever applied for bond since day one? I don't believe they have, because guess what? It would have been turned down. First of all, I don't believe, to me, that is proof that they don't think he's innocent. Because if they thought he was so innocent, they would have applied for bond, and they haven't.
Yeah, Billy, the thing about a defense attorney is that they are to seek justice for their client, not for the system, not for the victims, not for anyone else. They are to zealously advocate for their client, and that's it. So whatever Ann Taylor may really think, she won't say it. All she'll say to anyone, to the court, to Bill Thompson, on the record, to a reporter, is that he is innocent. He can't wait to get into that courtroom to prove his innocence. He's going to take the stand in his defense. We're going to prove that he's innocent. And we expect that we will be acquitted. They have to say that. They're not allowed to say anything other than things that help their client. It would be unethical for them to be truthful in that other way.
Mike, that's what they said when he was extradited from Pennsylvania back to Moscow, Idaho. He can't wait to get back there so he can prove. If he was so innocent, he would have asked for bond and to be released because he didn't do it. That's never ever been discussed to me. And again, that doesn't sway the votes of a jury. But to me, the fact that they didn't request bond shows that A, well, what a serious quadruple murder, and B, the prosecution has very, very strong evidence against this defendant.
Yeah, they should have asked knowing they'd be denied. You should always do that. She's doing an amazing job. She's doing an excellent job, but maybe in the beginning she didn't think about it, or it fell through the cracks, or it just didn't happen. But she should have asked for it, knowing it's going to be turned down. I mean, you got to do it because you're supposed to, not only are you supposed to defend, zealously advocate for your client, but you have to make sure you hit all the milestones along the way and ask for everything that you could possibly ask for, knowing you probably are not going to get your motion granted, but you have to do it because that's part of your ethical obligation. She knows that. But I think you're right. It doesn't look good when the defendant doesn't say, can I get out on bail? That sort of thing. Can't you ROR me, release on recognizance?
Right.
It sounds ridiculous, but you should do it as a defense attorney. You have to do it as a defense attorney. You're supposed to do it as a defense attorney, knowing it's not going to work, but you have to do it.
Elsa from the chat, you can get bond in a case like this? There's no way. That would be stupid.
Right.
Elsa, right. They wouldn't, but the fact that the attorneys didn't even request it, to me says, because they know they have a damn guilty client. And you're right. It would be turned down because if the judge issued it, he'd be strung up in the town of Moscow in the town square. Let me go back to Ann Taylor for a minute here.
More passionate, I would say, than lawyers in other murder trials that I've covered in terms of when she talks about her client's innocence. Especially, she said something especially interesting at a hearing that I was covering back in April. Take a listen.
For the court to allow the prosecutor to say, we need to keep this all private for a fair trial, really ignores the public nature of this case. It really ignores the fact that Bryan has been essentially convicted in the media. You don't have to read but a few articles to see how negative they are about him. He has a right to have this information withheld, brought out in public, so that people can see it's not this neat little package. So people can start to wonder if Bryan's innocent. Your Honor, Bryan is innocent, and he has an absolute Sixth Amendment right to have his hearings in public.
Our defense team firmly, and I mean firmly, believes in Mr. Kohberger's innocence. And right now, he's being held to have a trial in a county that believes that he is guilty. In this country, we pride ourselves on a jury system that doesn't stand for that.
So the reason I think that's important, again, it just goes back to this plea deal question. There's no feeling right now like those negotiations are happening behind the scenes. I mean, the feeling is that Ann Taylor, the defense, wants to go to trial. They want to prove that Bryan Kohberger is innocent. And again, on the prosecution side, also haven't heard any.
The defense does not have to prove that their client is innocent. The prosecution has to prove that Bryan Kohberger is guilty. And the defense has to try to poke holes because, of course, the prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he's guilty. But again, let's get back to the families. Imagine how the families feel when they hear this from the attorneys. Bryan Kohberger is innocent. I know that they understand that this is what attorneys do, but I also know that they don't want to hear that. They all lost loved ones. And to hear that coming out in the courtroom that is bending over backwards for this defendant to get a fair trial. In fact, the other thing I wanted to touch on, Mike, was that they want to move this trial out of Moscow, Idaho, to a more, how should I say, sort of liberal area, an area maybe. You can't go to a place that hasn't heard about this case because you'd have to go to Borneo or somewhere because this case has been publicized all over the world. However, the people of Moscow, Idaho deserve the trial to stay in their town because they were horrified and inconvenienced and had their whole town under a microscope because of what happened to these 4 students.
Yeah, Billy, under the 5th and 6th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and every state constitution, the trial will take place in the district in which the crime took place. That's where the trial is going to be, and it's part of our Constitution. It's part of our ethical heritage, our legal heritage. Now, the thing is, this will be decided very soon. In September, they're going to have a hearing on this, the motion to move the case, change what they call change of venue. The motion is going to be heard and decided by judge somewhere in at the very, very end of August. I'm sorry, August 29th, just in 2 weeks. And they want to move it to Boise. It's a more populous county over there, where the city is located, where the courtroom is going to be located. So you have a wider range of people, and perhaps different thinking people, maybe difference between city people and country people, or whatever it happens to be, whatever the dynamics that Ann Taylor is looking for. She thinks that she could shop around and get better jurors in Boise, because Boise's got 250,000 people, and Moscow's only got about 40,000 people. So she's trying her best to move it out there. Bill Thompson said in reply to this motion that, this is it's a local, national, and international case. Everybody knows about this case. And as you said, you'd have to be in Borneo, stuck there with no internet, not to know this. And so,
Mike, I don't mean to disparage Borneo in any way, but I can't think of a place further away from Moscow, Idaho.
Exactly.
I want to get back to the families, and this is the Chapin family.
It has been a year since 4 University of Idaho students were murdered in an off-campus home in Moscow. The past 12 months have been full of legal twists.
Folks, this is actually an older report. We're at like 19 months now. So November will be 2 years.
And turns ever since. Prosecutors are now working to build their case against the man accused of the killings, Bryan Kohberger. Our Morgan Romero takes a look back at what happened in November of 2022 and where things stand today.
November 13th, 2022, a day that changed how people around the world talked about Moscow, Idaho. On this day, local law enforcement found 4 people dead in a home off King Road. Along with the victims, investigators also discovered a few key pieces of evidence. A K-bar knife sheath investigators believe belonged to the murder weapon. On that sheath, police say they found DNA that didn't match anyone living at the house. The next day, people would know the victims as University of Idaho students Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Goncalves. Police launched a homicide investigation, and days later, autopsies revealed the 4 victims were murdered. Within 10 days of the crimes, Moscow police held 3 press conferences to address the public, all without having a suspect in custody.
We know you have questions, and so do we.
In a week and a half, investigators say they had collected more than 100 pieces of evidence, taken 4,000 photographs, reviewed 1,000 tips, and conducted 150 interviews. One of the biggest leads to a potential suspect would point to a white Hyundai Elantra. Court documents would later reveal the make and model of that car was seen speeding past the King Road home right after the murders. Local law enforcement would begin looking into this November 25th. On December 7th, the Moscow Police Department brought this tip to the public. But by this point, court documents say a Washington State University police officer had already found a white Elantra registered to Bryan Kohberger, living in Pullman, Washington. 2 weeks before the end of the year, Kohberger and his father drove that car across the country from Washington to Pennsylvania. There, police collected trash from his Pennsylvania family home, and an Idaho state lab matched DNA to the knife sheath found November 13th. 47 days after the students' bodies were discovered, an arrest is made. December 30th, Pennsylvania State Police take Kohberger into custody. He's then extradited to Idaho, where he would wait for his first Latah County court appearance on January 5th. On this day, major details in the investigation were released in a probable cause affidavit. Over the first quarter of the year, search warrants would show what investigators took from Kohberger's Pullman apartment and his university office. Kohberger made several court appearances leading up to a grand jury indictment May 17th. Less than a week later, at the suspect's arraignment, a trial date was set for October 2nd. This date would eventually be thrown out, with both the state and defense advocating for more time to prepare for the trial.
Well, we know that really the people that advocated for this were the defense. wanted it more than the prosecution. Of course, because the prosecution is going for the death penalty, they had to allow as much leeway. And don't forget, there is so much evidence in this case. The amount of discovery to turn over to the defense was so voluminous that they too needed much more time, Mike.
Yeah, you got to think about this. Moscow, Idaho, you got them involved. You got the state police involved, the Idaho State Police, their crime labs and things like that. You got the FBI with all their fantastic technological assistance. So you've got evidence coming from three different, a lot of it coming from three different law enforcement agencies, 2 local and 1 federal. And that's got to be sifted through. They've got to go over it numerous times, and then they got to take parts of it and keep giving it over time to the defense. Ann Taylor has said that she still hasn't received all of the discovery that she knows that the prosecution has, and the judge, John Judge, has given the state of Idaho, Latah County, up until the middle of September to finish turning over everything, and that's pretty much going to be, I think, pretty much a hard deadline, because he wants to get that done, because that's part of the guarantee of due process and disclosure that is due to Kohberger and the defense team. But once you put once you make sure that the case is going to be a death penalty case, it changes dynamics completely. If the death penalty was off the table in this case, things would start moving a lot faster. But because of the death penalty being on the table, things go much slower. It's a much more difficult case, and it is going to be much more involved case, and it'll make the case take a lot longer. Instead of, I think he's pretty much, John Judge has kind of outlined about 12 weeks, has reserved about 12 weeks for the trial. If the death penalty wasn't on the table, it'd probably be about a 6-week long trial. But that's the dynamics that we're dealing with today.
From the chat, Mike, a quick question for Professor Mike. Do you think he will plead guilty once the trial date becomes so close, just like BTK did?
There's only one stumbling block to before I can answer that, and that's going to be in towards the end of the year, in September 5th. There'll be a motion heard on the inapplicability of the death penalty to the case. Ann Taylor is going to argue that the crimes for which he's charged with and the evidence that has been disclosed does not constitute sufficient, doesn't warrant the death penalty being imposed. It sounds kind of silly for us, but she has to do that. She has to do everything she can to challenge everything that the state is doing. So my guess is, once that hearing is over and she loses that, because it's very obvious that this crime involves the death penalty. Once that happens, I think at that point, you still have like 9 months to go before the trial. It would happen in June. But I think at that point, once that's her last bid to save his life, once that happens, now he's definitely looking at that firing squad. There's no going back after that. At that point, I think absolutely first thing she's going to do, 9 o'clock the next morning, she's going to Bill Thompson's office. I'd walk over there, a couple of cups of Dunkin' Donut coffee, and sit down behind closed doors. I'd be like, Bill, let's talk this over. What can I do for my client? We'll see.
Yep, absolutely. Zoe 413, thank you for the $5 super sticker. Love your channel. Thank you to both of you. We remember the victims of this tragedy, no doubt. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like real crime, true crime from a police perspective, you're in the right place. And if you want to contribute to us, we have a Patreon with 4 different levels. And you can, 4 different levels, and you can contribute to us on Patreon, or you could become a YouTube channel member where we have 5 different levels and contribute to us. And we appreciate all of our fans, our friends, and our subscribers. And to watch more of Police Off the Cuff, you can go to www.youtube.com/@policeoffthecuff, and you can binge watch on our videos. If you love us so much, you can binge watch. So I want to play this again, getting back to the victims. That's the theme of this show today.
On Saturday. And with Maddie up on her shoulders. And that is the last text message that I have from Kaylee.
On November 13th, 2022, Steve and Christy found out the devastating news that Kaylee and Maddie were gone. The heartbreak ever since has been unbearable.
It's real, and people, I don't think sometimes understand that this isn't TV. And yes, there's TV shows about it, but it's real.
This is your life.
This is our life.
They're not characters.
No.
It's not entertainment. It's a disaster for us.
I mean, I think everybody has seen the food truck video. I mean, it really sums things up. I mean, to me, their relationship, it's heartwarming but heartbreaking at the same time to watch those videos. I mean, I could watch them and smile, and I could watch them and just cry.
I just love the fact that you guys have put together this beautiful Facebook page.
Yes.
And that you share so many wonderful memories and pictures that we've never seen before. The page is flooded with encouraging and uplifting comments.
I wish that I could reply to everybody. I can't, unfortunately. But I read all of it. I wake up in the morning, and that's the first thing I do. And before I go to bed, that's the last thing I do. And I want the people out there to know how important it is to me. And
It made a difference in our lives. Friends of Kaylee that we haven't even met will send us photos of times that they had together. So whenever you get to see new photos of your daughters, and I pass those on to the other victims' parents as well.
I hope it never stops.
Their home in Rathdrum is filled with gifts from the public that honor and remember Kaylee. This is just, it leaves you speechless.
It really does. It's comforting for me, because that's kind of how you envision it, you know, and how you hope that it is. It's just so real. That up there is Kaylee and Maddie.
Best friends, Kaylee and Maddie's ashes are side by side. Their parents say they would want it that way.
Right now, Kaylee's over here, Maddie's here.
One bright light this year, a new grandbaby, her middle name in honor of Maddie and Kaylee.
We call her Maddie K. She smiles so much, that baby.
So this baby and all of your grandkids have brought you so much joy.
Yes.
Yeah, good distractions to get out of your head being in a dark spot and think about, you know, what you can do to make every day a little bit better for the people around you.
I think it would be much harder without all the love and support.
When this is all said and done, if you remember these 4 kids, that's the end goal that we're all working towards. And we're going to forget whatever loser did this, whatever monster put this together. He's going to become not the story, and the story will be...
He'll be non-existent.
Yeah, he won't even be around to be remembered, and everyone else will be. You don't want it to turn you into a monster because something bad has happened to you.
No.
The Goncalves family will continue to celebrate Kaylee's birthday.
We do plan on doing Kaylee J Day every year. Do something you love.
With the people you love.
And they're also collecting keychains from all over the world in honor of their daughter.
Hashtag keychains for Kaylee Jade was my idea. You know, people always want to do something. We have a lot of personalized ones, and people send us M's and K's. If a keychain comes from Chicago, Illinois, Kaylee was thought of in Chicago, Illinois. She was in thought. She was in prayer.
A year later, Steve and Christy are still taking this one day at a time.
Wow. It's it doesn't stop. You wonder how with something like this you can get back on with your life. You know, how do you get your life going again? How do you go back to work? You know, how do you go back and lead a normal life? How do you have, you know, happy times with your family when this is an open wound?
Yeah, Bill, just think about it. You know, when we've had, you know, people experience death in their families with grandparents and things like that, maybe siblings, and you get past it, you move on. But sometimes that's a natural thing, because when an older person dies and things like that. But this is so unnatural and so awful that, you know, it's a day-to-day, as you said, it's a day-to-day thing. You just put one foot in front of the other. That's all you can do, and hope that, you know, you can begin to live a life again but it'll never ever be the same.
This is Madison Mogen's dad.
Keeps been going. Every spring on Maddie's birthday, a day in May is dedicated to spreading kindness.
She was the best child I could have asked for, and we miss her so much. Maddie May Day is something that my sisters came up with. We just wanted to have her birthday, May 25th, be a day that we celebrate and that makes people's lives better in the name of Maddie May.
And just like all the families impacted by this terrible crime, Madison Mogen's family continues to heal a year later. Coming up, you'll hear about Ethan Chapin from his family. The Chapins are carrying on his legacy with the Ethan Smile Foundation.
Any kid, any dream, in Ethan's name. It's the very, very best that we can do for him.
Stacy and Jim Chapin tell us about their precious son.
I'm a lot better than I was. Just knowing that the two kids, Hunter and Maisie, are doing well is a relief for me.
It's literally all that matters as a mom.
Hunter and Maisie Chapin are back at the U of I this year.
The friendships that they have and the support system that they have, it's priceless for us.
Let's talk about Ethan. Tell me what made him shine, because he shined from birth.
He was easy. Yes, he was so easy. He must have known it from the beginning that he just was going to have to take Easy Street because there were two others. Somebody was going to cry until they got the attention, and Ethan just was like, well, it's fine. I'll just wait my turn.
Amazing. Hunter just loved to be around him, and everybody loved to be around him. I mean, he just had this magical thing with people.
That's a word we haven't used in describing him. It's true. He had a magical, he touched people. It was amazing.
Months after his death, they started a foundation in his honor.
It's called the Ethan Smile Foundation. People want to genuinely help our family. How do you help a family who's in this situation? And, we had money in a GoFundMe account. And so we put all of it into the foundation, and we will scholarship kids.
Stacy also wrote a children's book with a portion of the proceeds going to the foundation.
The title of the book is The Boy Who Wore Blue, and it was actually his triplet color. It's a wonderful story. It's a reminder to just live your best life.
She went on the Today Show to talk about it with Savannah Guthrie.
It's the only thing that I have left as a mom is to be his voice. Do I wish we were not under these circumstances? Hell yes. I'd live in a cardboard box on a street to have my son home, but that isn't going to happen.
Ethan also worked at a tulip farm in Washington.
The kids loved working with him.
The farm created a yellow tulip to remember him. It's called Ethan's Smiles.
His smile was just amazing.
Oh, so cute.
He always smiled.
He did.
All the time.
Dimple.
And Jim and Stacy say Ethan was in love. Tell us what you want to share about that relationship.
We were blessed to spend the summer with Xana. The most important thing I think that people should know is that Ethan was exactly where he wanted to be. We say in our family he was in the right place at the wrong time. And, you just have to live with that.
Ethan's girlfriend, Xana Kernodle, lived at the King Road house.
They were very sweet together. That's where he stayed most nights. We all knew it. He's a college kid who was in love.
Stacy did something this year that surprised even her. She went to CrimeCon in Orlando, Florida.
There is a huge national following of true crime in this nation. We happen to be at the epicenter of it. I was asked to sit on a panel and talk about the great things that can come from tragedy. I actually got to meet with a group of, 24 victims' families, that are kind of in a similar national spotlight. But I was curious if there was some support, kind of a support group there. I happened to be walking by when they were doing the Idaho session. They were doing a question and answer. There were some things that weren't quite right. And I thought, well, here's my chance.
My name is Stacy Chapin, and I'm Ethan's mom.
You could have heard a pin drop in that room.
I can speak on behalf of my own son. who was an incredible human.
How did it feel to do that?
Actually, it felt quite empowering.
And we miss him all terribly.
I have no.
This is such a great salute to these victims. You know that this mom, Ethan Chapin's mom's a very strong woman, and the fact that he's a triplet is just an incredible. I'll pull up the picture of the family there, and you can see his brother and sister, and how these folks have dealt with this. And then, we as the true crime community want to keep the memories alive of Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Madison Mogen. But also remember that the job isn't done here, that we don't know how this case is going to go. And I'm sure the families, they hate when they hear that, Bryan Kohberger is innocent, and as we say, and we state and restate all the time, is that is our system. And defendants are innocent till proven guilty. And the prosecution, that is their job, is to prove the man that you see on that screen guilty of this crime. And that'll be the job of Bill Thompson and the prosecutors from the Moscow District Attorney's Office. Mike?
Yeah, Bill, they have a ton of evidence. But they got a whole heck of a job on their hand because they have to synthesize it and present it to the jury, probably in a chronological fashion, and explain it all to the jury because the jury is there. And hopefully the jury will do their ethical duty and they will give, I hate to say this, but they will give Kohberger the benefit of the doubt until it has been proven that he is guilty of the crime. They should approach this with an open mind and give him a chance because everybody, no matter who they are, deserves a fair trial. So they do that. So that's why the prosecutor bears the burden of proving each and every element of the crime, what we call the corpus delicti of the crime. They have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And Ann Taylor will try to prove that there is a reasonable doubt. But hopefully it will go off on time as scheduled. If not, hopefully there'll be maybe a plea deal in the works sometime in the new year. We'll see. But it's going to be one long trial. It's one heck of a heavy load for the prosecutor to present all this evidence and present it in a way that makes sense to the jury.
Absolutely. Whit H., I was looking for, did we ever hear confirmation that they were going to have a change of venue? No, that hasn't been decided. It is, however, been requested. The judge has not ruled on that yet. My feelings are, I think this judge is going to grant it. I just think that he's trying to bend over backwards to do everything possible for the defense in this case. And if he doesn't grant a change of venue, Mike, could that be a reason for an appeal?
Yes, if Bryan Kohberger is found guilty in Moscow, Idaho courtroom, Ann Taylor, they have a lot of resources there in the defense, on the defense side. She will, of course, that will be one of the appealable issues. Not to say that she'll win, but he'll be, if he's guilty, he'll be considered, if he's found guilty, he'll be in prison. And while the motions are going through the Idaho court system, he's going to be behind bars. But that will give him one more appealable issue if he's found guilty. So I think you may be right. Judge John Judge might just say, look, this is one less appealable issue. Let's just let give Ann Taylor this one here, and we're going to have the case in Boise. We don't know, but it's a big consideration.
Mike, on the screen, Caper Girl, and I didn't hear this, but if this is in fact true, thank you for apprising us of this. The judge denied the change of venue yesterday.
Okay.
All right. I think that's cool. A good thing for the prosecution, a bad thing for the defense. Machine 2, we may not know 100% it's going to go, but I'd say it's fair to say we know and the general direction it's going to. I just want to say, some of the evidence that that the prosecution has in this, and let's talk about some of the evidence they don't have. And everyone is really, of course, concerned with the fact that no murder weapon has ever been recovered. People are concerned with the fact that, as far as we know, no blood evidence was ever recovered inside his vehicle. As far as we know, no blood evidence has been recovered on any of the clothing that they collected in the search warrants of his apartment and of his parents' home in Pennsylvania. But as I'm saying, I'm preambling with this with saying, as far as we know, we don't know everything that the prosecution has. Did Bryan Kohberger have an opportunity, if he in fact committed these murders, to perhaps wear a Tyvek suit to cover all his clothing with that? And once these murders were committed, to go to a preordained location and to bury the clothing that he wore and change into new clothing? Did he have a chance to wash up? Did he have a chance to get rid of the murder weapon? Some of the things that he couldn't cover his butt with, of course, was some of the electronic evidence, which they've had hearings about. And not all of it was that powerful for the prosecution. A defense witness attacked some of the electronic evidence. So that bothers many people. It bothers many people that, as far as we know, there was no relationship with any of these girls prior to this murder. And as I said, as far as we know, we're not privy to all of the evidence. I still don't think that all of this discovery has been turned in. They say they have, but the prosecution can always slap some discovery on the defense the day of the trial, and they've been known to do that. Mike.
Yeah, Bill. There's a ton of evidence, circumstantial evidence of his guilt. There's, we've got the touch DNA. We have circumstantial evidence of his car, a white Hyundai Elantra, being seen speeding through the area. It's even been caught on a very blurry still from a camera. We have some audio from a Ring camera. I think that there was some audio of someone crying in that house around 4:30 in the morning. And that's all good circumstantial evidence. So if you're looking at it from is the glass half full for the prosecution? Yes, the glass is half full. However, like you said, where's some of that blood evidence? We've got the DNA, but where's the blood evidence? We don't have the murder weapon. We don't have like what you consider something other than DNA, like a good old fashioned fingerprint at the scene. We don't have that. We don't have any. So far as we know, like you say, we don't have any established relationship that would give rise to some sort of motive. We don't know if he collected, as of this point, if he collected any trophies. Did he take one of their ID cards? Did he take a piece of their jewelry, a wristwatch, a photograph, something as a trophy to take back and that he could keep? We don't know that. So there may be these things, but we don't know. But even no matter what, even if you've got like that DNA, it's not going to be a slam dunk. You and I and Phil have been in trials where the jury will go down a rabbit hole and bend over backwards to decide how many angels can dance on the head of a pin before they discuss, well, what's the worth of DNA. So juries are free to do that, and you don't know the dynamics of the jury, how they're going to view all of this. So it's
Absolutely.
not a slam dunk case.
A question from the chat, Anastasia. Excellent question. Another question for Professor Mike.
Okay.
Do you think the defense will face hard problems debating the DNA since it's only touch DNA?
Well, it's the touch DNA. You may say, okay, well, what is the accuracy? What level of depth and breadth of that DNA? What is the analysis? What kind of results are you getting? and so they can claim that it's not accurate enough, and yeah, that's right. However, we must remember that they can attack the touch DNA and say, and they're free to do that, but the DNA was also that they took from him. They took a buccal swab after they arrested him in late December, and it turned out to be, like a pretty much a 99.9999% match to the touch DNA. So they'll try to argue that the touch DNA really was inadequate. It wasn't perhaps exact enough, or that the science of touch DNA is different than, say, blood DNA or something like that. They have that right. They're going to have to get an expert, but since they had that DNA, they also had his father's DNA from a member of his family. So that's how they got that's how they were pretty sure now. That's like a double check on the accuracy of that DNA. And they did the buccal swab. So it's going to be a fight. Part of the case is going to be a fight between prosecution experts and defense experts on how accurate is that touch DNA, because that was a huge piece of making probable cause. Not the only thing, but a huge piece of determining probable cause that he did the crime.
Ava Hawkshaw, today they ruled that the county deserves a chance to see the jury there in Latah.
Good.
I'm having others say that it's not been decided yet. Cockney Cal 17, I read yesterday's papers, judge hasn't ruled on it yet.
Yeah, that's what I had read today. Yeah.
Okay, so something, guys. We know that it's impending. I sort of felt that, and I could be wrong. I'm frequently wrong, but that judge would rule to change the venue.
Yeah.
And it's an inconvenient thing for everyone involved here. However, I think because this is a death penalty case, he's going to bend over backwards to try to appease the defense. And if that means moving it to Boise, Idaho, to get a jury that the defense will claim won't be tainted, that's what he will do. I really believe that. I want to play a little bit of this here from CBS News.
Student murders. Correspondent Peter Van Sant spoke with two of the victims' families, one speaking out for the very first time and one providing new details about their daughter's fight for her life.
It's been a long and painful journey for the families of Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, the four University of Idaho students who were stabbed to death in the pre-dawn hours of November 13th, 2022.
Do you ever dream of your sister?
Yeah, I've had some dreams of her. Just gives me some peace knowing that I know she's okay.
Xana Kernodle's sister Jasmine and father Jeffrey are speaking out for the first time since Xana's murder.
It just happened, What do? You can't do a damn thing.
Everybody's going to work and you look out the window and there's kids running down the street laughing and you're just like, how can you be out there playing? My daughter's dead.
On the night of the murders, Christy and Steve Goncalves' daughter Kaylee was in the same bed as her childhood friend, Maddie Mogen. The Goncalveses say coroner Kathy Mabbitt told them before a gag order the killer attacked Maddie first, then moved on to Kaylee.
There's evidence to show that she awakened and tried to get out of that situation.
They say she cried out, and her wounds show she fought for her life.
The way the bed was set up is what...
She was trapped.
She was trapped.
Xana also fought back. According to her father, she had severe defensive wounds.
She went down fighting.
I believe so. It's upsetting to think about.
She was always very strong person.
A judge has entered a plea of not guilty on Bryan Kohberger's behalf, but he is not the person the families want us to remember.
He's not important other than what he did and being held accountable. I'll be here to keep reminding people who these victims are.
So Peter is joining us now, and you mentioned it in this piece.
I just wanted to also emphasize for today's show that we wanted to focus on the victims and give the victims uh, their day in the limelight, because so much of the focus of this case, of course, is on Bryan Kohberger. And, is he guilty? Is he innocent? And, none of us can say that. The only people that can say that are the people ultimately that'll be chosen to sit on this jury. And whether or not this case is held in Latah County or in Boise, Idaho, that will be determined. But what remains is that this was a heinous crime. And there is evidence that they have the right person. And again, there's so many people out there that, look, when this first occurred, the media was upset that it took 6 weeks to arrest somebody. I was horrified by that. I was like, are they kidding? Have they ever worked a murder before in their life? And they're acting like they're upset that should they bring in the FBI? Should they bring in, and the FBI was already working on it. Should they bring in the CIA? Should they bring in Interpol? No, they're working on it. It takes time to gather evidence. It takes time to prove a case. It takes time to come up with a suspect. It takes time to put the evidence together so you do everything correctly. But the media just throws it out there. 6 weeks is just too long. Yeah, I guess the media, this is the world of immediate gratification. We're all trained to be immediately gratified. And the media was the worst on this. In the very 6 weeks, it took 6 weeks to arrest Bryan Kohberger, and that was too long for the media.
Yeah, Billy, it's not like the public was saying this is taking too long. The media alone was saying it was taking too long because their demands for a story every single night, go, 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 go. And they were saying, and no one else, just them, the public wasn't saying it, yeah, this is a cold case. Oh my God, it's a cold case. You, me, Phil, every detective, every police officer in America knows 6 weeks is nothing at all. That's lightning speed for a case, especially involving this sort of technology where you've got to get subpoenas and get all that information and go through it and analyze it from cell towers and genetic DNA kind of evidence. You got to get all that done. That takes forever. I remember in the legal bureau, it would take this was years ago, it would take a month, at least a month, to get a phone dump from say Verizon or something. That's minimum. So and that would be considered fast. So it's sad because it kind of threw the public for a loop, because the public then starts asking, what is going on? Maybe the police aren't doing a good job. And poor Chief Fry and the Moscow Police Department, people were making fun of them and questioning their abilities. Meanwhile, they kept everything quiet. They did everything professional. From what we all see, it was well done and a very quickly done, well done case. And it was amazingly fast. 6 weeks is nothing in a homicide case.
Absolutely. Elizabeth Buttroff, I hope I said your name correctly. The lack of forensic evidence is actually what makes me lean towards guilty due to his obsessions and PhD level studies, an arrogant attempt at a perfect crime, in my humble opinion. Elizabeth, no doubt he used his background, he used his education, he used his knowledge about police procedure to thwart the investigation and to get away with what he probably considered to be the perfect crime. But when we all, at the end of the day, when we all analyze this stuff, we're not interested in that. What we're interested in is that he took the lives of these 4 beautiful kids that you see up on the screen, Ethan Chapin, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Madison Mogen. And, how he got away with it, if he is in fact the right guy, the criminal trial that's going to be upcoming, all of those things, of course, we're concerned with it. Of course, we want the person that did this to be held responsible. If in fact it is Bryan Kohberger, many of us would like to see him get the death penalty, or at the very least, life without the possibility to parole, or one of those ridiculous sentences like 100 years consecutive on each one of the victims, which basically just says you got life in prison. But as we've learned in New York, life in prison doesn't mean that. They regularly let cop killers out of prison in New York State regularly. And I can't tell you how many have been released in the past year. And their sentences were life without parole. So does it really mean that, Mike?
Billy, yeah, I hope in Idaho that life behind bars without possibility of parole actually does mean natural life behind bars with no visit up to a parole board hearing at all. And because he planned this, he was being meticulous as he possibly could. I do believe, as the viewer was saying, is this possibly an opportunity to try to commit, because he thinks he's so smart, to commit the perfect crime? We talked about that trucker the other day, Alexander. His crimes were committed 47 years in the past. So you may commit what may be a perfect crime for a while because maybe technology and science hasn't caught up, but eventually it will. In this case, he overestimated his intellectual ability. Yeah, he did get over. We don't know where the Tyvek suit is. We don't know where maybe the gloves are. We don't know exactly what route he took home. We don't know where the murder weapon is. But he did leave enough information to tie him to this. The DNA, the Hyundai Elantra, that sort of thing. The visiting the location the next morning before the police actually were called. His cell phone is pinging at that location. There's a lot of excellent circumstantial evidence that he did the crime.
Absolutely. Kaylee from the chat, thank you so much for the $2 super sticker. Justice for Maddie, Ethan, Xana, and Kaylee. 100%. You're preaching to the choir. Jane C., I was worried they would never find the killer. We all were, but you have to understand that homicide investigation takes time. Absolutely takes time. Anastasia, do you forget the meme? Everyone is an expert on the internet. Isn't that the truth? Everyone is an expert. Machine 2, okay, taking what we know about touch DNA on a knife at the bedside, the dude's car looks exactly like the suspect car, and then when they finally catch up to him, he's trying to get rid of evidence. Machine 2, I 100% agree with you. You're right. You have to connect the evidence. It's a chain of evidence. It's a chain of custody. It's connect the dots. It's like the old coloring books we used to use. You connect the dots, and it all leads back to Bryan Kohberger. Whit H. Yeah, a lot of people think that solving crime is like what they see in the movies or TV. They need to give police and detectives time to do their job. They are professionals. Whit H., thank you so much for that remark. Very important. Ava Hawkshaw. And now some are saying the arrest was too quick. All they can do is their job and their best. 100%. I'd like to meet the people who are saying it's too quick, because there was many people saying it was way too slow, Let me play this from a local TV station.
Idaho college students and new questions about whether the suspect's graduate studies in criminology are a clue for a possible motive. Dana Griffin has the story.
The man accused of stabbing 4 University of Idaho students to death plans to waive extradition to get back to Idaho as soon as possible. According to his public defender for the extradition hearing in Pennsylvania, Bryan Kohberger was shocked by his arrest and says he's eager to be exonerated.
He was aware of the ongoing investigation of the death of the 4 individuals, but he denied, I guess he would say that he implicitly denied any involvement.
Did he kill these 4 students?
I would say at this point, no, but he did not specifically say that, nor did I ask that question.
According to 2 law enforcement sources familiar with the investigation, DNA evidence, and specifically forensic genealogy, was key to honing in on their suspect.
Are there any other suspects, or are you 100% certain this is your guy?
I am certain this is our guy.
No doubts?
No doubts.
Police Chief James Fry also making this promise.
Yeah, when we get to where we can release information, I think people are going to go, okay, that makes more sense now why they held everything and why they did what they did.
Tonight, new details are emerging about the suspect's background. DeSales University in Pennsylvania confirming Kohberger was an undergrad student and got his master's in criminal justice. Several months ago on Reddit, a student investigator with the name Bryan Kohberger invited ex-cons to participate in a research study to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision-making when committing a crime.
We're following up on everything. Facebook, Reddit, you name any social media or anything out there.
In recent months, Kohberger was working towards a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University, less than 10 miles from the University of Idaho. Former WSU grad student and classmate BK Norton tells NBC News, Bryan seemed odd from the beginning, but I thought it was because he was awkward, adding he continued to attend classes and continued on like nothing had happened. I still can't wrap my head around it. As Moscow police contend with one of their most difficult cases in years, the chief emotional and grateful for his officers.
They work hard. They did it right. And the investigators and all the team we brought in did it right. And I'm proud of them.
I really like that chief.
I think he's great.
In the beginning, I gave him a little bit of a hard time. I was just like, I didn't think that they had the experience in Moscow, Idaho to investigate a case like this. But they got help. They got help from the state police. They got help from the FBI. They had all the help they needed. And the results speak volumes, that they got results. And that's the most important thing. Folks, Machine too, I want to answer this. What's your opinion on the first 48 hours theory? Do you believe that to be true, that if you don't catch the perp within the first 24 hours, then the case starts to turn cold? I don't believe that. I believe what it means, really, the case gets more difficult. It doesn't grow cold after the first 48. It gets a little more difficult because in a homicide investigation, many cases are what we call ground balls. That's an NYPD expression. The case is easy. Right away, say, oh, her husband did it. Oh, her son did it. Those are the cases you solve really quickly. So people sometimes get spoiled by that. And they say, oh, if you don't solve it in the first 48, that's a theory. And there's some truth to it. But certainly the case does not grow cold if you don't solve it in the first 24 or the first 48 hours. But thank you for that question. That's a great question. Folks, I just wanted to repeat myself once more, is that we felt that the Idaho victims, have we, as the public, have we forgotten them? Have we forgotten these kids? Have we? Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. And my thing is that we never forget them. And they're always remembered for what the horrific caper that happened here. Mike, your final thoughts.
I think people should just realize that, these kind of cases, they're very, very difficult to investigate. They take a long time. This case was done professionally right off the bat. That small little police department, they were outmatched at the very beginning, but within 24 hours, they had the state police there. They had the FBI. That Chief Fry, he's a good man. He knows exactly what he was doing. He got the big guns in there. He got the technological help he needed real quick. And therefore, he should be proud of his department and his men. And this is really about the Goncalveses, the Kernodles, the Chapins, that sort of thing. That's what this is all about. We're not going to care about this guy, Kohberger, after this case is over. But we care about the families. We should always keep those crime victims and those families in our prayers.
Very well said, Mike. Folks, again, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Bill Cannon. On behalf of myself and Professor Mike Geary, who also, we forget to mention, was also an NYPD Sergeant. Have a great night, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in.
Good night.